Hey, and welcome to another episode of Surfing the Portal, the program that's designed to get input for the Pinecone Utopia Portal research project that we're trying to conduct here for targeted individuals that I call selected individuals. So every Sunday night, we come on and we chat about what happened on the portal, what happened to us, what we learned this week about different ways to help targeted individuals that I call selected. And well, actually, we had an interesting interview this week. I'll tell you about it in a minute. And then at the end, what I've been doing is I've been connecting dots, because I think I have an idea of what's going on and when it's going to end and how it's going to roll out. But in order to understand it for a wide community, we have to learn a lot of the little dots that I've learned down through the years to connect, to see if you can see the same pattern that I'm seeing. So we usually end with that, and we will again today. So first of all, let me tell you why we've decided to do Surfing the Portal. We've decided to do this to keep interest going in the Pinecone Utopia portal, on which we have an ongoing research project trying to find out what techniques targeted individuals use to alleviate their suffering and sometimes confound their perpetrators. Sometimes, and I suppose this is possible, although I haven't heard this conclusively, actually get out of the program. So to keep that research program going, we have this little talk show every Sunday night. Also, I want to tell you that on that blog, we also have suggested techniques. Mindy and I got involved in consciousness studies, heavy duty, after the turn of the millennium. And we learned a lot of different techniques that have been used down through the years to expand consciousness, relieve suffering, and so forth. So we know those from our past, and we try to collect those on the techniques every week. Since then, we found out that we also get information on shielding. We've got a shielding section. Discussion, we put things in, we don't know where they would go otherwise. We have these presentations are on there, contact us, and then a discussion from the community. So I'm going to turn it over to Mindy for a minute, and she can talk about some of the things that people have written to us during the week. And she can even tell us a little bit about the incredible interview we had with Dr. Robin Kelly from New Zealand. And the fact that he's a TI, and the fact he's on the same page as all of us was really encouraging and motivational for us. So what came in, Min?
Well, let's see. We have, this is quite interesting. This came in from somebody who prefers to remain anonymous. And this is a technique called, I'll probably pronounce it wrong, but I'll do my best, Iriu Eloas, which is Gaelic for growth of knowledge. And it has a video that describes the technique. We listened to most of it. We were quite impressed with it. You have to maneuver through a little bit.
Yeah, I think we're going to get involved and really start to do this.
But yeah, this was a really wonderful teaching, wasn't it? And so it was just perfect. And we thank the person that sent that in to us.
Who remains unnamed.
Right, because it's exactly what we're looking for. We're looking for things that can teach us new methods and new techniques that we can use, that we can try to see if they do relieve the suffering, you know, among other things. So this was a really wonderful one. I recommend going to that.
It's under techniques?
It is under research.
Okay,
I
so it's
believe.
being used.
Yes. So if you go to the research page, you will see there are now 13 different.
These are techniques that are currently being used by TIs, and they find them effective.
Exactly. The techniques page, I was listening to the first portal that we recorded, and I noticed that we had mentioned two things that we had promised to add into the site. Well, I'd completely forgotten them, but it reminded me, and so I added this introduction to Takatino, which we mentioned. There are, actually, there's a whole page on YouTube full of videos about Takatina. I just picked this particular one as an introduction. So that would be something, a technique to try that could be really effective.
Yeah, let me give a little, maybe a little advertising, a little commercial for Takatina. We tried it one night, and how it works is you just get into some rhythm, and you start doing something to express that rhythm. And then they'll give you an assignment, like tap your foot every third beat.
Mm-hmm.
And so you'll concentrate on that, and then they can have you make another sound.
Like a clapping of your hands.
Clapping of your hand.
As you're moving in a circle, generally with a few other people.
Right.
And what happens is as you continue to add yet another rhythm on top of the ones you're already doing, so it starts out slow and then adds more and more, and it gets you to the point where you completely go, how would you describe
You're
it?
absorbed in whatever you're doing. You're not thinking.
Yes.
You're out of your mind, so to speak. If you were to do this when you were being targeted, and you could concentrate on this while you were targeted, they would be able to glean no data from you. I'm positive.
Absolutely.
But I need somebody that's a target to really try this. It's fun and it's cool, and it really does.
It's almost like altering your consciousness. So you could equate it, if you've ever done any kind of entheogens that alter your consciousness. Plants, for example, and you've had this experience of being in a different state of consciousness, this does put you there.
Right.
And we quite liked it when we did it several years ago. So we'd like to hear back from anybody who tries it and gets into it.
Right.
Please let us know, is it working, and what your experience is with it.
And actually Brian too, who was one of the people who suggested things that put us onto this research, said that if you do several things at once, or think about two things at once, it really confuses them.
Right.
I would imagine a musician that's, you look at a jazz musician, we watch them a lot, and they'll get, you can't think about music and play like they do. You have to be in kind of a state where you're becoming the
music plays
music.
You in a way, as opposed to you playing the music. Well, I'm sure any musicians out there could testify to this. When you really get into the groove of playing that piece of music, your mind has to kind of check out, and it just works through your fingers somehow. Yeah. All right, so that was Takatino. Oh, the other thing that I had noticed from Portal 1, we talked about gratitude, and Paul had mentioned a particular video that we really liked, which is narrated by a guy named Snordster. If you've ever heard any of his work, he's
fantastic voice. He calls himself Les.
No, Les Visible is the author of that piece of writing on gratitude, and Snordster narrates it. So where did I put that? I think I put that. Yes, I put it here under other worthwhile discussions and presentations, and you just click on a place called gratitude here, and it will take you to the video. So love to hear any feedback on that. We already had one comment on the post that really loved it and was very grateful that we put that on there, because it did evoke a feeling of gratitude, which, when you're in genuine gratitude, it does take you completely out of suffering and, could be really useful as a practice. So that's there.
I would advocate that too. I'm sort of a curmudgeon, and these kind of things generally don't interest me. I'd rather do like hard things like deep meditation or something. But I watched this video, and it puts you in a place. It's called a place called gratitude. It puts you in you think of being grateful in a different way. It's not, oh, I'm grateful for my mother, I'm grateful for the food. No, you get into the place of gratitude, and the things that you're thinking about give birth to 5 or 10 or 15 other things. And then it's an amazing little video, and I know you'll enjoy it. And I really hope that it helps our TI audience.
And look at what's written in the description of the post on YouTube. It says, gratitude changes you. It changes the cells in your body and makes you flexible and young. It neutralizes anger. Most people aren't aware that depression is the result of turning your anger inward, turning it upon yourself. Anyway, it's really worthwhile. We hope you'll check that out. And then I guess lastly, I'll just mention that we got this beautiful letter from a doctor in New Zealand. And he wrote us saying that he loves the healing solutions, the fact that we're seeking healing solutions for those who are targeted, and asking for some practical suggestions. And I want to tell everyone who's listening to this, this is a team effort. In other words, we are looking for input from everyone into what works, so that, we can share these things that work with other people. So in any case, Robin wrote in from New Zealand and tells us that he actually uses these very techniques with his patients successfully. And we wrote him and asked him, would he please do an interview with us, which he agreed to do. And don't miss it, because it's really a fantastic interview. It's posted here. It's on YouTube. And it's posted here on the Other Worthwhile Discussions and Presentations. We called it Community is the Answer, an interview with Dr. Robin Kelly. So very inspiring, really great interview. We really had a blast having that conversation with him. He's an interesting, fun kind of guy.
He's trained in allopathic Western medicine, but he understands its limitations, and he's looked the same as we did to Eastern practices for different healing practices and different modalities. And he's finding that they're effective. We're finding that some of them are effective on the techniques section and the research section. So it's a worthwhile interview. I'm sure he'll do more interviews with.
Right. We really look forward to working with him in the future. And I've asked him if he would please record some teaching interviews, teaching us the simple techniques that he uses. And one of the things that I love that he said was that a lot of these techniques, like meditation and breathing practices and so forth, can be very simple and don't need to be associated with any kind of a religious belief system. So that, a lot of people have a tendency to think, oh, well, meditation's a Buddhist practice, and, I'm a Christian, so I don't do the, practices that come from other traditions. And that's not necessarily the case. I mean, things like chanting and breathing techniques can be exercises with no association to.
Yeah, we go out of the way not to offend people's beliefs, but you really have to have a little open mind on this. I know we were learning about the Franciscan monks. Wow. And when we were studying the Enneagram, and find out that the Franciscans, use meditation, which seems to be an Eastern practice, but I bet it's not. I bet all of these things spring from the Middle East. Anyway, hey, there's plenty of room in the chat room if you'd like to
Well,
contribute.
I will say, we have been moving this this live interactive chat around from channel to channel because our original channel, we were restricted from using Google Hangouts platform.
We did something really bad.
We have no idea what we said, but
Well,
whatever we said or did.
I'm glad we said it in a way because it must have been really damaging or something.
Somehow effective.
But it is a pain in the ass to have to.
Right. So we've been moving around. We were on the Paul Marco channel, and a lot of people had trouble finding that because 3 or 4 different Paul Marco channels. But here we are on the Pinecone Utopia backup channel. Please subscribe to this and enable the notifications if you want to be alerted when we do these live forums, because we do want your participation and your input.
We'll still be putting things on the other Pine. The difference between these Pinecone Utopia channels, one is the portal, and one is 2 words. That's the original channel with 11,000 subscribers. And then this one, we just accidentally had.
Right. We were trying to make a portal channel and had no success at doing that when I discovered that there was a second Pinecone Utopia channel already there. Apparently 2 spellings, one with 2 words and one all one word.
Right.
So we'll just keep it as our backup channel, and
we might be able to use it for Hangouts for other things. We'll see. We're going to talk. The other one will always post things on the original Pinecone Utopia channel, but we can't do our live chats and post them immediately. That's the only difference. So we'll try to keep up with that one and keep up with us. And the world of clamping down on these perpetrators and what's going on in the world is really picking up. We're building community, which is a big part of actually, Robin Kelly said that was probably one of the things that we're getting started here with you guys and us and the Techno Crime Fighter Forum and Eric Karlstrom's wonderful lectures. And it's starting to build into a really powerful community that's got all kind of plans to make moves. And thank you, Sincerity 9. Good to see you. Anyway, so I think things are happening. I'm very encouraged. And I think I can see how it's all unfolding. That's why I started this thing at the end of these little broadcasts, the last 20 minutes or half hour. What I'm going to do is I have been doing this. I've been creating a dot. I'll explain the dot, and then I'll connect it with another dot. So, and at the end, we should have a running unveiling of what I think is coming down the pike here. Anyway, it's my analysis anyway, and we'll start it again this week. The first thing I thought would be important for people who wanted to become aware and wake up to what was going on with us was to realize that we're in a specific place called duality world. We live in a world of duality. There's good and bad, left and right. They define one another, they create one another, and we are in the middle of dilemmas based on duality. So you're either this way or that way. They're trying to divide and conquer us any way they can, and when they divide us, they'll subdivide us and subdivide us. So what we need to do is really try to rise above duality world, rise above the us and them, and see duality world for what it is. It's just a program to teach us or some kind of a selective thing. It's just a program. And there are visions outside of duality world that predate our real dark immersion into duality world that I think happened 3,500 years ago, and I'll tell you exactly when we get to that part of the discussion. So what I started to do, there was a writer who was writing within the first 1,000 years of our deep immersion into this duality world, and his name is Lao Tzu. Now, Tzu means teacher, and Lao could have been his name. It could have been the collection of stories from many people, but a writer that we've always looked to find very profound, interesting things. And he starts off a book called the Tao Te Ching by talking about the Tao. It's spelled T-A-O. Now, this Tao is outside of duality world. If you can picture duality world just floating kind of in this flowing Tao, it's everything. Let me read how Lao Tzu defines it. The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. The unnameable is the eternally real. Naming is the origin of all particular things. So what he's saying there is the Tao, even though we've given it a name, it includes everything that's named. So there's nothing differentiated from the Tao unless you differentiate it by naming it. It's all in there. So if you can picture yourself ascending out of duality world and standing somehow on a high mountain, overlooking this enormous, beautiful flow. You can picture water or something. It's coming down around you. That's how I picture the Tao. And everything arises from the Tao. Now, how do you create from the Tao? It's a real easy process. You name stuff. It's the same reason that the same way the Abrahamic God supposedly created the things that he created by naming them. In the beginning, there was the Word. Remember that? Mm-hmm. Here's how it's explained by Lao Tzu. Free from desire, you realize the mystery. Caught in desire, you see only the manifestations. This is an encouragement to get above the duality. If you're caught in the drama, you're not going to be able to get away and see it. Says, yet mystery and manifestations arise from the same source. The source is called darkness. And of course, that's the source of the Tao. It goes on to explain this process of creation that I'm going to use about 7 lessons down to teach you how what's happening to us is being orchestrated. Lao Tzu says, when people see some things as beautiful, other things become ugly. When people see some things as good, other things become bad. Being and non-being create each other. Difficult and easy support each other. Long and short define each other. High and low depend on each other. Before and after follow each other. Now, there's a lot in that, but all I wanted you to remember from this is that when you name something, you separate it from the Tao and you create something. And more often than not, it creates its opposite. In order to create up, it has to automatically create it down. Remember that. We'll get back to that when we get into the creation process of how what we're going through was created. Okay, we've got a couple. Affluent for you. The attackers have authority with cooperation of demons over demons. Yeah, we'll talk about demons later. They're interesting. And Shay Smith says hello. Hello, Shay.
Hello, Shay. And affluent for you.
Affluent
The
for
nicest
you.
people get targeted, in your opinion. I agree with you. The best of the best.
That's right.
That's why you're selected.
Right. I know what they're going for. And through this process, I'm going to roll out what they're going for. And they can't have you guys opposing them. That's the problem. Dr. Robin Kelly agreed with me that these are special people, and I don't think every total one, because there's probably one or two that they picked up just because they just got angry at them.
Yeah, that could be.
That could be too. But well, I know that the Joint Investigation Team, they're all very special people that would not put up with the unfolding of the agenda that they say they're doing. But anyway, let me go on with what we continued on. So we talked about dualism, and then we talked about the secret of creation. And then last week, we talked about the deceptions of time. Now, we conceptualize time in three ways, probably more than that, but just for the sake of my discussion, let's just say three ways. There's chaotic time, which is nothing is related to anything else. It's all just random happenings, and it gives birth to concepts and ideas like coincidence that I think is kind of ludicrous. But chaotic time is something that we're schooled in. Newscasts only give you pieces of information. Very seldom do they connect the dots. When we went through school, you would close your math book before you got out your English book or your Spanish book. They're different things. Well, they're not different things. They're all related. And the fact that they've taught us to see them as unrelated is a real atrocity, I think. And that gets exacerbated as people get through, as you go through your education. You learn this or that, but you don't learn those. You know, you become a doctor of this, but you know deeply down the rabbit hole that they put you in. You don't know across the rabbit hole. In other words, chaotic time teaches us only analysis at best and keeps us confused. We're kind of floating in a sea of information, unrelated information. So I encourage us not to look at things in chaotic time. More and more people are starting to see things in linear time. Now, linear time, I think this is the creation of the Industrial Revolution, where you start off and you live through this and it ends. There's a beginning and an end. There's a future and a past. In linear time, it's hard to predict what's going on because you've never been there before. There's a lot of uncertainty and fear that comes out of this type of time. Also, it kind of invites catastrophic endings since there's no notion of predictability. So what they use it for, and what we've seen it used for by the mind control experts that are orchestrating this whole thing, they can do predictive programming with you. In other words, they can show you a scenario in the future, a linear scenario in the linear future, and you can absorb it and think it's real, and you can think about it coming true. And they use it all the time. What I want to encourage us to do, and I need this piece to set in what I'm going to show you later. We need to look at things the way they looked at before chaotic and linear. They mostly looked at things in cyclical time. Everything in nature is cyclical. That's why when we talk about all of these catastrophic things that are predicted to happen, the New World Order, the AI, the that has to be in linear time. It doesn't fit in cyclical time unless we're so removed from when it happened before, we can't even see the cycle. But when you see things in linear time, anything can happen. But cyclical time has a logic to it. There's an ending, there's a beginning, they fit together. So it's a different way of conceptualizing time. It's everything in nature is cyclical. That's why I think cyclical time is the way to look at this whole situation. So, example of cyclical time, days and nights. One day cycles into another. That's the sun cycle. The moon cycle, every 28 days. A lot of things hinge on that every 28 days. We used to actually measure our years in a 28-day calendar, in a moon calendar, which was very popular and very insightful, but to keep us in a more, if you can do a linear twist on cyclical time, the creation of the Gregorian calendar and how it changes to sun time. Not to mention that, of course, they were worshiping the sun at the time.
Right,
They still do.
right.
Anyway,
Well, they need linear time in order to do predictive programming.
yeah,
So that, because they'll use the energy of people's expectations to actually create those scenarios.
right. That's Hollywood. And that's what they've been doing for a long time. So we talked about the monthly cycle. The yearly cycle, of course, is a year. And during that cycle, we know that there's going to be a summer. We did know before they started playing with whatever they're playing with. The heart.
Our weather wars.
Yeah, weather wars. But generally, you go from spring to summer. Summer's a little warmer. In the fall, it gets cooler. And it goes through a winter, and then it starts again. And you can plan, well, next spring I'm going to plant more corn, or next spring, or next summer, during the first week of August, I'm on a vacation somewhere cooler. You can really make plans with cyclical time. So we do use that. And it's an ancient way of using time. They were very interested thousands of years ago in a thing called the precession of the equinoxes, because they could see from their position on the ground a huge cycle, a precession. Well, what would it be? 2 times 12, 20, about a 26,000-year-old cycle through all the different houses, and they could watch it, and they could kind of tell the tenor of what was happening by the major influence of this precession of the equinox. According to that theory, we're proceeding into the age of Aquarius, which may or may not be good, may or may not be bad. I have a take on that, but I'm not going to give it to you yet. You're going to have to just hold on. By the way, I'm going to link this all together in a video that Mindy will produce and make pretty and interesting. So anyway, so cyclical time. There was a 26,000-year-old cycle called the cycle of the Yugas that we'll talk about next week. But this week, I want to turn you on to something that you may not have heard of. I found it in a book called The Fourth Turning.
Would you like to share that screen?
Yeah.
Let's
So
see
just
if I can.
no, don't do anything yet. Let me just introduce the turning.
Oops.
Here we are. Hi.
Hang on a sec. There we go. Okay. All right. Which one do you want?
Okay, I want nothing right now. It's like we are up there. Hi, Mary. All right. Well, anyway, the saculum is a method of measuring time. It's been used for thousands of years, and it takes into account a person's lifetime. So at certain times in history, a saculum cycle was 120 years, probably back in the time when the Bible say that their people got 900 years old. Maybe the saculum was 900 years. But generally in modern times, it's run between 80 years and 120 years. And the saculum cycles that we're in right now are 80 years. And I think that's pretty common. That's pretty much how long people live. Now, the saculum year, or the cycle of a person's life, has 4 seasons. And Mindy's going to show you this, if we can get this. Well, Strauss-Howe are the people that wrote the Fourth Turning. And I recommend the book. It's so sensational because you learn so much. Now, they weren't aware of what was going on, really going on, when they wrote the book, but they might have subsequent books and done subsequent training. Anyway, so just like there's a summer, fall, winter, spring, there's 4 seasons. There's a high, you could say it's like the summer. There's the awakening, it's like the beautiful fall. There's the unraveling, and then there's the crisis. And every year, every 80 years in our lifetime, it's run through these 4 seasons. Yeah. So in we have dogs, and we have a loud one right now. Anyway, so when the war ended, it ended the crisis period. When World War II ended in 1945, it ended the crisis period that had actually started in 1925 and ran through 1945. At the end of a crisis period, there's always a clear winner and a clear loser. It's an interesting thing about the cycles. After the crisis is over, a high time starts. And I was born in the United States, and it was probably higher than it was around the rest of the world. The war was over, everybody was happy, but the American market controlled everything. And it was, boy, everybody was eating high off the hog. It started the run to the suburbs, TV dinners, all these wonderful convenient things. And that was the high. The high ran from about 45 to 85. No, to 65. 45 to 65 was the high period.
Right, they're about 20 years each, more or less, right now.
The awakening started in 1965, and it ran through 1985. Now, in an awakening, what happens is the people who are on the earth at the time feel like making things better, improving things. And what happened this time, 1965, around there, early 60s to late 80s, people were really interested in ending the Vietnam War, stopping war altogether, and then making things fair for everybody. Civil rights was a big deal. And we were all marching off to get that accomplished during that awakening period. But I'll tell you what happened on the way to the awakening. The powers that be, who of course understand this cycle, like a musician would understand music, played the awakening. And during this awakening, what they did was they took the young baby boomers and they seduced them away from the cause of ending war and civil rights, and they turned them into hippies. I was one of them. We grew our hair long, we rebelled against our parents, and we got seduced into sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And that diffused the awakening. So in the essence, nothing was really done about war. I mean, they ended the Vietnam War only to quickly start another. And they passed civil rights legislation in '69. And if anything irritates a situation, it'll be a piece of legislation. Let me just leave it go at that. Although it did help integrate a lot of people into positions where they would not normally have had. After '85 came the unraveling. Now, the unraveling is where things kind of go not so, I mean, it's not the awakening. It's not the birthing of new music and it's the unraveling. Things get to be a little more mellow, a little bit more not so cool. And this ran from 85 to 2005. And then the next crisis started. Well, the last crisis I told you started in 1925 and ran to 45. So it encompassed a war, world war. I suspect that in 2025, when our crisis is over, it'll be over. In other words, I think that this is one thing I do want to reveal tonight. This is one thing that I think that going through this change, whatever the change is going to entail, it's going to be pretty much over by 2025. And I'm really optimistic about positive outcomes. There's always, according to Strauss-Howell, there's always a clear winner and loser. And I'm sure the winner is going to be human consciousness. Anyway, so that's the saeculum cycle. Another aspect I want you to know about this cycle is that there are different types of people born during these different seasons. Strange as it may sound, it's kind of like, I think it's like a meme comes in. Maybe it's because of the circumstances, because a high time is very different than an unraveling time. But it seems like, having watched two sets of these people come on board, come on the earth, I can see similarities. Anyway, so during the high time, and our last high time was 45 to 65, the people coming on the earth were called prophets, with a PH, two PHs in that prophet.
Mm-hmm.
So, and these people, they're more spiritually oriented. We call them the baby boomers, but that's a prophet generation. We have another prophet. No, we don't. Strike that. Yeah. Anyway, so the people that are born during the high are the prophet generation, and they take part in the awakening. They steer the awakening. That's why when the powers that be corrupted the awakening by creating the hippie movement and the music, they knew what they were doing. They were taking the prophets and getting them off the scent, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
People
derailing their good intentions.
Derailing their good intentions.
Mm-hmm. Thanks to the experts over at the Tavistock Institute.
That's right.
Who are directing everything.
People born during the awakening are called artists. And they play a role, although not as heavy a role as the prophets do in these awakenings. Then came the unraveling. And this unraveling would, what did I say? 65 to 85, 85 to 2005. During the unraveling, a very important generation is born. And this time we call them the Millennium Generation. But they're also nicknamed the Hero Generation. This is the very generation, this is the meme that fought World War II. In other words, these were the people that were born between 1905 and 1925. They lived to fight World War II. These millenniums are involved, I mean, really involved in what's happening now during the crisis period. They're both sides of the argument. And I think the wonderful thing during this crisis period is that the millenniums, the hero generations, are learning to not focus their ire on one another, but to focus it on powers that are crushing us. So what I wanted to tell you, and the reason I wanted to go into the saculum so heavier, by the way, I really like to recommend that book. I think learning the saculum is something everybody should know, because the controllers, the people that are orchestrating this horrible thing that we're going through, use it. It's one of their tools. So if we know it, gives us a leg up. And I wanted to tell you, in a crisis period, and the crisis period ends at 2005. So you can look for that cycle.
2005 or
No, 2025, I'm sorry.
Okay.
That's why she's here. Right? So we are in the last part of a saculum cycle, actually coincidentally.
So it started in 2005 and it goes till 2025.
Right.
More or less, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And if you're a Bible,
it feels like a crisis.
Right, and if you're a Bible fan, you believe in a 7-year tribulation, we could be kicking into it, or we could have just kicked into it. I mean, the trials of the whatever's going to happen. I don't know about that, but I do kind of believe in the.
Well, maybe the main point maybe you're trying to make is that since we are in the crisis period now, and it is due to end in 2025, it will be followed by a high time.
Absolutely.
So things will be really good when we get through this time. Right.
Yeah.
No matter what happens, follow that we go into a high time.
The cycles, everything in nature is cycles. What we're going through now has got to be part of several cycles. And if we know the cycles, and we know the beginning and the ending parts, it gives us something to rely on. You know, I mean, we can just know, well, I'll tell you when the crisis is going to end. And it would, you know, you can't say that there might be what do they call it? In the summer, these warm summer days that even happen in the late fall, you know, that could happen. But basically, the way the cycle works is it's over. Now, next week I want to explain to you the Yuga cycles. This is a 26,000-year cycle. And I'll tell you where I think we are. I kind of disagree with the guy who wrote the book on it, Surya Yukteswar. But I have the advantage of being on the ground living it right now and watching. So I can give you the little correction that I'll make to the Yuga cycles as described by Sri Yukteswar. And we'll do that next week. And then the following week, I'll place us on the Yuga cycle. And you can kind of see what's going on. Then I'll show you a couple things that we can do right now that will help us out in the future no matter what happens. So that's where we're going with this. Thanks for tuning in or turning on. Or we've had 7 viewers and we have a crying dog. Take it easy, Lou. So
good. And I just wanted to point out that Sincerity recommended a YouTube for us all to see with a soothing energy practice. I'm really looking forward to checking that out, Sincerity. Thank you. I mean, that's why we do this live, so that we can actually have the opportunity to interact with you. If you have questions for us, we can address them. If you have stuff to share, that can all happen. I know it's kind of a nice little party, and you guys get to talking about stuff we're not talking about, which throws us off a bit, you know. But well, me, because I'm reading it. Anyway, thanks for joining us. We're really glad to have you here, and we hope you'll go to the blog and check out what's on there and offer your own input.
And if you're in a TI group or you're on Facebook, try to get the idea of the open source research concept out there so that they can come to the portal and make their contributions or pick up some tips. Because what if we find 5 or 10 ways that totally confound the control system? I mean, or what if we could find 2 ways that keep people from experiencing the pain of being blasted? It would just be so wonderful. So the more people that we can get, every target should know about the Pinecone Utopia portal study.
Absolutely. Yep. And it only happens with your participation. So spread it around to other people you know. I mean, one of the things that that Dr. Kelly pointed out, one of the real gifts of the work we're doing is that we're creating community. So, we're foiling the main tactic of isolation, which the perps use as their main card.
Yeah.
And what we've done is we've really begun to create a real community so that people can, get together with each other, and together we're so much more effective against
Right.
perpetrators.
That's right. So we're here for you.
Thanks for
Participate if you
finding
can.
your way
Thanks for
here to
finding your way
this
here.
channel. Come back again next week. We'll, as long as we're able to use this platform, we'll keep broadcasting from this channel.
Right. Okay, take care.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.